Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Break It Down for Brackens podcast. Today we have Donna Joy. She is running for school board in Jefferson County. Today's episode is brought to you by Brackens Painting. Brackens Painting is a residential and commercial painting company located in Charlestown, West Virginia. We currently serve all of West Virginia and Virginia. We are currently very busy, but we look forward to offering prices for projects anywhere and of any size. We're also brought to you by City National Bank, which you'll hear a nice plug about them at the end of the podcast, read by none other than Melissa Knott, my banker. I work with her at the Jefferson County offices in Ranson and in Charlestown. So, like I said, today we're talking to Donna Joy. Let's learn more about why she's running for office, what the school board does, and why it's important to get out and vote. Donna, thank you for being on the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Great. Try to speak up a tiny bit more, okay?
Okay.
Great.
How's that?
So let's start with your background. Tell me about who you are personally, who you are professionally, where you're from, did you go to school, family, anything you want to let us know. And remember, you're talking not just to me, but anybody who might listen to the podcast. So what should we know about Donna?
Okay, well, I grew up in West Baltimore, where the riots were, and I raised my siblings and went to college. I was the only one in my neighborhood to go to college. Most kids dropped out in middle school, and so I went to college to be an engineer. I was a physics major. I had 100 average in trigonometry in high school. I won the science award. But when I got to college, you would have thought that I'd never even been to school, to high school. They went over everything I ever learned in one day, even though, I won the award for being the best student in the high school. And anyway, so I was very disappointed and was angry that I felt like I'd been cheated of an education, and I wanted to help other kids to teach them how to get out of poverty, and I wanted to fix the system. So I changed to education as a major, and where I grew up, there were a lot of single parent families, a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. So a lot of kids were in special education and labeled emotionally disturbed. So I really wanted to help that group of kids, special ed population. So I went on to get a master's in I went to Towson University for the bachelor's in elementary ed. So then I went to Johns Hopkins University and got a master's in special ed, and I had a concentration in neuroscience. I fell in love with the brain and how the brain worked, and so I wanted to do more with exploring the brain. I had an internship at the Kennedy Krieger Institute with worked with head injured children and children with autism. So I decided I wanted to pursue a PhD in the Mind Brain Institute, but I was told I needed to take more statistics classes and then apply. So I went back to Towson because it was a lot cheaper and took the graduate level statistics, but that was in the psychology program. So I ended up having to be a part of their graduate psychology, experimental psychology was the degree, in order to get these classes. So I ended up, taking these classes, but I found that I really liked the math. And so I started doing more of the math that I really had loved, when I first started. And so here I am with already 2 degrees and in a master's in experimental psychology and a bachelor's in math. So I ended up finishing those. Now I have 4 degrees and I still don't have it exactly right about what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help kids. All along I was teaching full time while I was going to school at night. So was teaching in Baltimore City. I taught severely emotionally disturbed children. And I taught special ed altogether for 15 years before I moved into the regular ed population. But so I found out about a program that seemed to cover all my degrees. And it was called Measurement, Statistics, Research, and Evaluation at the University of Maryland, College Park. So because it had the math and it had the research and the education, sociology, psychology. So I started the PhD program there. And I got married, had children, and moved to Virginia and started teaching in Arlington, Virginia, where I taught special ed math at Thomas Jefferson and then Wakefield High School. And 6 years I taught in Arlington.
You say Wakefield?
Yeah, Wakefield High School.
I used to live in the Wakefield district, but I ended up going to O'Connell. I'm actually from Arlington.
Oh, okay. I loved it there. The high school. I guess you would know.
What year was that?
I started in '96, and it was maybe 2002 when I left. But there were over 150 different languages spoken at Wakefield at the time, which was amazing. It was the most diverse population I had ever, experienced. And I just love Arlington. It was very progressive, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but they were very research-based in their education programs. I don't know how it is now, but at the time when I went, they were number one in the country, pretty much. They were in the top 10, the Jefferson or Arlington County schools. And it was because they made their decisions based on sound research, which is one of the reasons I would like to be on the school board here. I don't want to get off on the tangent, but so anyway.
We can do, Donna, this is my podcast. We can do any tangent you want to. I mean, all of a sudden we're talking about education in Arlington, which I don't have much to offer when it comes to education besides my own education, but to know that you taught at Wakefield, and me being from the Wakefield district or whatever it's called, I understand what those neighborhoods were like. And I was in high school in the late 90s into the late 80s into the early 90s. And it was definitely a rougher school for the Arlington County area. But like you said, very, very, very diverse. And again, part of this podcast is really to break down who you are. So if you go on a tangent, I'll guide you back. So you can talk about whatever you want, Don. I mean, part of another reason why this podcast I feel is important for me primarily is it helps me understand who people are before they get voted for. I like to vote for character, and it's hard when you're running for office to show what your character is to so many people. So tangents are okay. Go whatever direction you want to go. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, you were mentioning that the Arlington County School District, they did well because they made a lot of their decisions based on sound research.
Right. Yeah. For example, I think it must have been 2000 or 2000. It was around 2000. They decided to change the time when the older kids went to school. And it was based on the research that, the younger kids went to school in the morning, and then the older kids, later in the day, to give the teenagers more rest because of, research. And that was done. We're in, 2020 now, and you still, I see school systems are just starting to do that. So that was over 20 years ago that, they started that program.
Well, that's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah, they did a lot of things that, we don't even, this school system isn't even aware of, how we teach reading is research shows that it's not the best way to teach reading, the balanced approach, even though they were given an award or somebody from DC came up and said, oh, you have a great reading program. but it's not what research shows is ideal. So,
Well, hold on. Let's back up for a minute. I'm still on character development here. So, tell me a successful story that you saw based on, like you said, sound research. I mean, the changing of school hours, that seems to be just a little too big of a concept, but tell me a story where something that you saw was changing was directly impacting student performance, how they were learning.
I can't hear you anymore. I lost you, your sound.
Okay. Can you hear me
Oh,
now?
now you're back.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. So tell me a story. I was saying that the changing school hours was, it's kind of too big of a broad program. Tell me a story where you saw successes with students learning more efficiently through some research-based changes that you saw.
Well, I mean, I was only there another 2 years, so that's a little difficult to
Okay.
find a direct example based on changing the school hours, but I can tell you that, um, you know, students, especially students that had jobs and, you know, they work late at McDonald's and they have to clean up afterwards, it gives them a little bit of extra time to sleep in. So those were some of the things that I noticed, but, you know, you really need to look over time for me to be able to give you.
Longitudinal studies.
Right. Yeah.
All right, cool. So you're from Baltimore. When did you end up moving to Jefferson County?
2004.
What brought you out here?
I like the country. I wanted to get land, and honestly, West Virginia was the. I had become a single mother, and I wanted my children to be close enough to their father, but I didn't want to live in an urban area. So I just wanted a better environment to raise my children, and Jefferson County seemed ideal.
That's great.
And I was able to get an acre of land, you know, as a single parent on my income, and I wouldn't have been able to do that in Arlington. So it was a real difficult decision to move from the Northern Virginia area where the schools were very good. I mean, my daughter had gotten accepted into one of the immersion programs for the bilingual school, which I really wanted her to be able to learn, you know, Spanish. But anyway, so that was the reason.
Okay. So before we get into what the school board is, tell me about any sort of community service or organizations you belong to in Jefferson County, maybe somewhere people may have seen you or recognize you from.
Okay. I never finished my education though. Is that?
Yeah, fine. Let's go back. Keep going. Yeah, keep going. Sure.
Okay, and then I'll go to community service. Well, so I ended up finishing my PhD at Virginia Tech because I had transferred. Yeah, so the PhD is in measurement, statistics, research, and evaluation. And there was a book published because it's called the emerging culture of online education. So I did my dissertation on instructors transitioning from face-to-face to online education. And that was in 2004. So 16 years ago. And now we see teachers having to, you know, do that more across all the spectrums. I had researched college professors at the time. So anyway, while I was teaching in Arlington, and then I moved out to West Virginia and I started teaching online. So I taught at 6 different universities. Because I have a PhD in research and statistics, every major requires their students to take a statistics, you know, statistics for science, to statistics for political science. So I was able to easily get jobs in the beginning. As time progressed, there are more and more PhDs because people can get PhDs online now, so it's just a lot easier. So they're more specialized. So you have more. When I first started, there were very few, people that could teach statistics and research. So so as time went on, fewer and fewer jobs, and you had to have the specific credentials. For example, I taught a science class at Strayer for like 12, 13 years, the same science class. And then they decided that you had to have a biology degree to teach in that department. Fortunately, because I had the master's in psychology, I was able to teach psychology. So I've taught psychology there for many years. But so I've taught just amazing different subjects that I've taught at the college level because of this kind of degree and the different degrees that I have. So, and I taught, this one is, I guess, mostly relevant. I supervise student teachers at two different universities, and I supervise dissertations in the educational leadership, mostly educational leadership. So I supervise principals' dissertations. Anyway, so that's the basic of my education. So you said community service. I
wanted to touch for a second on statistics, especially graduate level statistics. I took research methods in undergrad, and everybody knows that undergrad is a different animal compared to graduate school. I went to graduate school at Temple University. Sorry, I got some sort of announcement there.
Yeah, I did too.
You got that too? Okay. And then when I went to grad school at Temple University, I had to take graduate level statistics. And at the time, I already had a budding career in Manhattan, and I was going to school in Philly, and I was living in the middle. I was commuting one way and the other way and one way and the other way to get to school. And inevitably, I missed classes. Oh my God, I've never experienced a curriculum that was so compounding from one class to the next class to the next. I literally could not get caught up. I had to negotiate with the professor and just say, I'm not going to be able to finish this class. How do we want to resolve this? But it was really amazing. But what's additionally amazing is how often I use what I learned in research methods and in my statistics class, specifically when it comes to simple concepts of sample size and population and things like that, and the type of study and all the biases. If you've learned that, particularly undergrad and graduate level, it applies throughout life. It applies in critical thinking. It applies in just analysis and decision making. I really grew to appreciate that part of the education, but I wasn't very good at it at the time of education, that's for sure. So I can understand some of that stuff you're talking about, and I also have said in the past that if I ever had 5 lives to live, I would spend one of those lives specifically in academics the entire time. And I love learning. I absolutely love learning. And I use this podcast as an additional version of continuing education with everybody I talk to. So thank you for that. That was really good background on the education. But yeah, moving forward, did you want to tell me about any sort of community service? Are you a part of any community organizations, or have you held an elected office before, anything like that?
Okay. Well, I was on the board of the Jefferson Community Club previously. Otherwise, no, I haven't held any type of office.
What does the community club do?
Oh, the Jefferson Community Club? We rent space to groups. The market, the handmade market is, they rent space. There's weddings there. They own the Morgan Grove Park. So the community club is responsible for, the upkeep of Morgan Grove Park. So yeah, those are the things that they do.
Okay.
So I am a certified recovery coach, and I volunteer with the Blue Ridge Recovery Resources. I work,
What kind of recovery? Go a little bit more into that for me.
Oh, Well, the whole project stemmed from Senator Unger, noticing, of course, that we have a serious opioid addiction problem in West Virginia. So he created a program where he goes to different parts of the state, teaches coaches, so individuals that want to help those in recovery. So him and his group, they have taught hundreds of people how to be recovery coaches. He secured grants and scholarships, so I think I might have only had to pay $50 or $100 to take the training. And then you donate at least 40 hours, 40 to, I think it was 100 actually. There were different levels of the program that I took. So you donate several hours and then you become certified. So I am a recovery coach, a volunteer recovery coach. Whenever somebody is, reaches out and says, I want to get well, I need a coach. And it doesn't have to be just for the opioid addiction, any sort of problem, conflict with your spouse, or anything that anybody just needs somebody to listen and be a friend and help find resources. So that's basically what the recovery coaches do.
What's the name of the program again?
It's called Grace, actually. GRACE. Yeah, I mean, I can give you the information.
No, just tell me what you said. It was the Blue Ridge something?
Yeah, well, one of the branches of Grace Recovery Coaches, Grace is the umbrella. The training is from, but then there's the Blue Ridge Blue Ridge Resources. That's an online campaign that we've been doing since, we've been quarantined. So people can reach out on Facebook. There is somebody there every day, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. who can, if you have a question, you can, send a personal message, or on the Facebook page, if you have any needs, if you just want to talk, if you, are looking for where to get your, a check that's missing in the mail, they will do anything they can to help individuals. So that's one of the coaching ways that I volunteer. I also work in the emergency room. So if somebody goes into the emergency room, they've overdosed, and the doctors and nurses will ask, are you ready to change your life around? Would you like a free recovery coach? And so we go into the emergency room and we start advocating, because, it can be very difficult. A lot of people suffering from drug addiction, they've lost everything. They don't have family to support them. They might not have anybody that they can call. So the recovery coach will go in and try to locate maybe a bed, in the state that their insurance will cover. Any kind of thing, calling people for them. And then the third, a fourth way that I volunteer is with the court system. Judge Hammer has a program, the drug court. And so I go in once a week with it's a whole committee of people there to help people that have been arrested in relation to, drugs. They've, stolen from work, or domestic violence, whatever it is. And these are people that have had a drug addiction, and they're working on that. So, we meet as a committee, we discuss every case, every client, and then go into the court. The people that are, if they're kind of like on probation, they come in and they publicly, they can cash in their, because they get rewards for staying on track, for various, meeting certain thresholds. So they get these points, and they can cash them in for things like shampoo or laundry detergent. And then
Really great.
they have that whole group to celebrate them. They have the rest of the people that are, they have the whole committee of professionals, the social worker. There are police officers, uh, the probation officer, maybe 8 different people, and then the recovery coach, which is what I do.
That's that's really great. Those are all significant community service positions. That's awesome, Donna. Moving on to school board.
Wasn't done, but that's okay.
Oh my goodness! No, come on, tell me more. No, I thought number 3 was the last one. What else do you do?
Well, that's just for the recovery coaching.
Okay.
There's 4 different. There's actually 4 because of the online that we're doing now. The other 3 we aren't really doing because of the lockdown.
Right.
So once that's up, then we'll go back into the hospital and the courts. But we are still actively. If anybody wants a coach, we are still doing it. We're just not meeting them face to face. We're doing it over the phone. So I've also been, well, I guess it's not volunteer, but it was for my community basketball coach at the middle school, and I was a volunteer swim official for the swim teams. So in Jefferson County, in West Virginia, the schools compete. Here, we don't have a pool in Jefferson County, which is unfortunate. Hopefully, if I get on the board, the new education complex would have a pool so that we could, have our own pool. It would be a lot easier. But right now, we share time. So all the kids in Jefferson County share time in the pool at Shepherd University with the other schools from Berkeley County. So if we could have our own pool, kids could get in a lot more practice. It's probably the only sport that they get less than 5 hours a week in the pool. You can do more on your own, but as an organized school sponsor, where other sports, track 2 or 3 hours a day, so that's like 15 hours a week as opposed to 4 or 5 hours a week. So we could be, more competitive, but at least, some kids, that's their sport, and it would just be helpful. I'm going off on a tangent, right?
No, you're not. No, you're. Here's the deal. This is called Break It Down for Brackens. So you're breaking it down for me. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, another reason that I'm really passionate about this particular issue is because we have kids living up on the mountain. It takes them 45 minutes to get to the pool at Shepherd, and that's very difficult. We don't have buses that take kids back and forth to these activities. So if we had the pool at closer to the school, they could go right from, or even at the schools. I know that that's a long way off, but one day it would be nice if we had pools at the high schools. Anyway, I can talk more about the mountain, which is, I would go into, I feel like we really need to invest more in that area for kids. I mean, there's not a lot for kids to do there. And we have some of the lowest income children in that area. So it would be really nice to have a little satellite program, after school program that the school system is responsible for. Do you know what I'm saying?
Kinda, I do.
Okay.
Have we crossed off all the community activities that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, I mean, I lot of community service. It's not necessarily with specific groups.
Okay.
But I also volunteer at the Jefferson County Community Ministries.
Oh yeah.
Well,
no. So again, part of the point of this podcast is for people to get to know you. So I think what we've identified is that you are definitely around the county. You're definitely involved, both civically and on your own, doing what you can and what you want to do. So it's not like you're a recluse. What I guess we would define is that you're actually out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the community. That's why I became a teacher here, which is, I didn't mention, which I think it's important that you know, that I,
Yeah.
wanted to, so my children were in the school system and they started in elementary school. My oldest daughter started in second grade and the youngest was in kindergarten. So by the time they were in middle school, I was noticing that the high school was hiring 5 new math teachers every year. I mean, my daughter, when she got to high school, she's actually only had one certificate, and it was me for 4 years of high school. So it was a serious problem. So I got a job at the high school to help, because I saw that there was a need. My children are going there. I am a math teacher. So I started giving up my contracts with the universities. I mean, I've still kept a couple, but I moved into teaching at the high school to be of service to my community, to fill a need. And anyway, so I'm a teacher in the county.
That's very good to know. That's very good to know. Which school are you at?
Well, I'm assigned to Washington High School.
Okay. So you're running for school board. I don't have any kids. I really don't know much about the school board or the school system. Are you able to give me a description of what the school board is responsible for or what it does?
Mm-hmm. Well, the school board is responsible for hiring and supervising the superintendent. They distribute, the funding. They make decisions on the curriculum to a certain extent. Some things are mandated by the state.
Well, hold on 1 second, Donna. Let's really break it down, because I can sit here and nod my head like I know what you're talking about, but I actually don't. We got to pretend we're talking to a 10 to 14-year-old person that has not much background on it. So the superintendent, that is the overseer of all the schools. Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's like, similar to a president. So she oversees the schools in the county. And then there's an assistant superintendent. And he's new.
Okay.
He's been there maybe less than a year.
Okay, and then you said additionally they are responsible for budgeting. Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, you have the finance department. That's all part of that Board of Ed office. They have a budget and the board would have to approve. We want to spend so much on X, Y, and Z. Do you approve? The board agrees. So it's basically just kind of, there's supposed to be an oversight group for what goes on at the board office.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, the to have oversight, definitely. So it's kind of a command and control kind of oversight. That was the right word.
That's the theory. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
But you asking about why I was running, and this is kind of relevant. So it's been my experience that a lot of times, for example, with my background in research, the superintendent will tell the board, well, research says this, and they shake their heads and, rubber stamp. Maybe they don't know enough about it, so they're depending on essentially their employee, which, that's not what works. That's not the way it's supposed to work. If you don't know, go find out, but by me having the background in research and evaluation, that's why I feel it's important for somebody to be able to, analyze some of these numbers and information. So that's one example.
That's
Um,
great. Well, hold on. You're
okay,
beginning to get away from my curriculum here, which was
okay.
coincidentally the next thing I wanted to learn was that I interrupted you as you were describing what a board does. And the
Mhm.
next thing and the final thing you had mentioned at before I interrupted you was curriculum. So
Mhm.
how does the board influence curriculum?
Well, I mean, textbook adoption. There, there's some things that the state controls. The state, like, it's during when the legislature's happening and hopping. They just ended in March, but so the delegates and Senate, they bring up these bills. And for example, I've been trying to get a requirement in our schools for students to learn personal finance. So at least a half credit in personal finance to graduate. This is what I've been advocating. And you can't get that requirement at the county level. They have a choice. They can say, yeah, you're allowed to teach it. But for it to be a requirement, it really comes from the state. So I, helped encourage this bill last summer, got it all the way through. I worked with several senators and delegates in the state. Our local delegates, two of them immediately approved it. It passed the House 100-8. So by the time it got to the Senate, it was towards the end. It was kind of used for leverage, which is, politics. So it didn't make it. So, next year I'll try again to get personal finance as a requirement. So our current school board, they can say, you have, at least offer this, or they can um, make sure that the schools are. So one thing with personal finance, as an example, they are supposed to be teaching it 2 weeks in civics class. Okay, that's what, the legislator said some time back. Well, that's not monitored, and the curriculum it's not substantial. So those are some of the ways. Is that clear? Like what
Absolutely. Yes.
the school board can do?
That was explained as if a teacher was telling me. So that is perfect, Donna. So moving forward, then what other things is the school board, what else do they have influence on, or what else do they do?
Well, when, for example, the school board signed off on the money for the pilot deal with Rockwell.
Mhm.
Um, that's something that they do. Like the sheriff, somebody comes in with a plan that affects the whole county, because the school board gets funding, they get tax money, they have a voice. So that's, dealing with the budget. Does that make sense? Did I answer
It,
that
it,
question?
it does, and I don't totally understand why the school board would be in a decision-making process for something like Rockwool, but that's probably
Right.
for somebody else to educate me on who has a say when things happen like that. I don't
Mhm.
really know.
Well, it
That's
was
a very
because
Mhm.
it was because of the tax money, because they agreed to say, okay, we won't, you don't have to give us your tax money.
I
So
see.
that's, um, now everything that happened after that, um, that was a personal choice of the school board, the court
Okay.
and everything.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a very foggy topic that I tended to stay away from because
Yeah, I wanted something else, but it was the first thing that came to my
well, no,
mind.
sure,
I
but
can
the
give you
reason
another
the
example.
reason I don't get into it is that I can't seem to find, again, with a little bit of research methods background, a little bit of statistics background, I realize I'm not getting appropriate data from anybody that I can call as sound data. So that's why I don't really mess with that topic, because it's just, I don't know who's right and who's wrong. So why bother? I'm not going to think about it. Okay, so those are some great examples of what the school board does. And my next question was, why did you decide to run? I think that based on the things you told me about your background, your community service, the fact that you are a teacher and that you've got like, who knows how many degrees and PhDs and all that. I mean, give me something juicy as to why you want to run. It makes sense why you want to run, but where's your passion lie?
Well, education is my passion. I started as a child teaching my siblings. I taught the kids in my neighborhood. I've, always been an advocate. I have students now that I encourage. Education has been extremely important to me, and I think it's important that we give the best that we can to our children. So the main reason, I guess, for running for school board is because, other than being extremely passionate about education, clearly, I am a career educator, teaching for 30 years at every different age, just about every subject you can imagine. But, I love my community and the children in my community, the whole state. But, right now, we have the counties on either side of Jefferson County that are thriving. The kids are, in the top 10%, these school systems, Washington and Loudoun. And yet we are in the bottom 10% in the country, in the state. Jefferson County, I think, is ranked number 2, but so what? If you're ranked so low as far as the whole country. I would like to get our schools up to the level of the schools in the surrounding counties. It's not fair that just because you live across the street, you'll have a much lower quality of education. So does that make sense?
It spawns so many more questions. When you run for school board, are you running in a particular district, or how is it broken down to determine whether you win or not besides the popular vote?
Mm-hmm. Well, so the way it works in Jefferson County, the system is broken up into districts: Middleway, Cabletown, Harpers Ferry, Charlestown, and Shepherdstown. And so at any given time, you can only have 2 people on the board that live in any one of those districts. It's not that they only represent that district, it's just that their home address, where they live. So right now, there are 5 people on the board. 3 of those positions are up for re-election. The 2 people that are currently that were voted in 2 years ago, they have 2 years left. So each term is for 4 years. So they still have 2 years to go. So you're not getting a whole new board every time. You have stability, which that makes sense. So Lori Ogden and Skinner, she's from the Cabletown district. So that means you're only going to have 1 opening for Cabletown, because you've got somebody on the board who has their position for 2 years, only 1 spot for Cabletown. Shepherdstown, Mark Osborne is from Shepherdstown, and the person that the school board appointed, Wendy, she just took over for when Arthena Roper left. So she didn't get elected. The board, appointed her, so she still has to run. She lives in Shepherdstown. So there are 2 positions available in Shepherdstown this time. Does this make sense?
Absolutely makes sense to me, yes. But
go ahead. Yeah, so the way that the election works is the top since we have 3 openings, and there would have only been 2, but because of the, Arthena leaving. So we have the top 3 will get, where the top 3, they get the most votes. However, and they'll get the position. However, if the third highest, if those all 3 are from the same district, that third person won't get a seat, because you can only have 2. And plus, aside from that stipulation, the third highest will only be serving out Arthena's term. So they don't get that 4-year. They will have to rerun in 2 years.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Now, if I live in Charlestown, does that mean I'm only voting for people in Charlestown, or am I voting for each district, or am I just voting on a popularity contest?
Well, that part of the question is a whole nother story, but
Right.
Hopefully you're not. But anyway, so you vote for anybody, because it doesn't matter where they live. Anybody on that board hopefully is there for all the kids. It's just where they live that, to divide it up. But you're not representing your own district by any means. I mean, that's not the plan. That's not the purpose of the design, is not for that.
Okay, so 11 people are running. I get to vote for 1.
You get to vote for up to 3. You can vote for 1, 2, or 3. So you will be voting for up to 3, no more than 3.
That's.
And
is it confusing between what you guys are versus what the magistrates are versus what city council is? There's so many different levels of confusion. And again,
and different districts.
We're breaking it down for Brackens. This is great, because when you walk into the booth, if you don't know really, then you're just winging your vote. It's democracy, but it's
what I like about these mail-in ballots. I was concerned because when research shows that when you have a lot of candidates for a position, the people that get the most votes are usually the top candidates on that form, because they do what you say. They just click, they don't know. They'll just click the top 3, which is exactly what happened in the last election. The 3 at the top on that ballot got the most votes. However, and unfortunately, I'm number 7. So, but this time I'm hoping with these mail-in ballots that people will spend more time with it, and they could go and research. But at least they're not pressured in this booth, and so
that's a great perspective. That's a great perspective. And I'm not trying to get out the vote or whatever, but I do think that anybody who might be listening, we could kind of inspire them to spread the word, because not a ton of people listen to the podcast, but if half the people who did told one person, hey, I heard of a really great idea. When you do get your absentee ballot, you'll see what names are on there. Go to their websites, Google them, check out what they stand for. This is a really neat scenario where you can truly do research on who you get to vote for. That's a very good perspective. And I think I'm going to try and find a way to segue that into every intro or every podcast. Just remind people, do your research, get out there. We could have the most sound winners for the first time in a very long time if people did do even double the diligence they did before. So that's a very, very good point, Donna. And again, that's that research and statistics background that you've got that just flows naturally. I hear it. Let's see. Voting day is June 9th. We were still on the topic of why did you decide to run? Did we cover that? I mean, fully, besides the passion for education and.
I want to bring the schools up to a level of the surrounding counties, and I see that there's a need. I mean, having taught in the school system, I I feel like they need somebody on that board that knows what goes on, as a parent and as an employee. Um, eh, uh, I mean, I know how difficult it is for an individual to access the board, as an employee or, the public. It's very difficult. You can go to these meetings, you fill out a form, you get to speak for a few minutes, but there's no guarantee that you're ever getting a response back. It's like this mystery, committee that it's not accessible. So I would like to bring, more accessibility to the board, to be a true servant of the community. Transparency, I mean, we need to know, well, why did you do that? What is your thinking? And I would create a website just for the board, not to put the recordings only of, those board meetings, but every decision that they make, we ought to have some logic behind it. Why did you spend $500,000 on these lawyers to fight parents who are just trying to get, services for their kids with disabilities? I mean, people need to know that. People need to know, the whole picture. People need to know, why were we fined? We were fined for violating employee tax. The federal government fined the school system. We shouldn't be wasting our money on these kind of things, So, to have it so that the public can see, and then, if they disagree, then the public can, make comment and have a formal process. That's another, I'm going off on a tangent saying
No,
things
you're
that
not. No. You are breaking it down. This is all about tangents, Donna. I mean, the thing is this is an opportunity for you to break it down on what you're thinking, why you're running, and why it's important. And like you said, accessibility, transparency,
and accountability.
accountability. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now, many parts of their school system aren't, there isn't a lot of accountability. It becomes your word against this mysterious entity. And, this dysfunctional. It's not helping us improve. If we want to have schools that, are of the quality of those other counties, like I said, we've got to bring up the level of, accountability, integrity, respecting teachers, employees. They need to be able to voice their concerns and not fear retaliation. But those kinds of things.
Donna, I love it. I love everything you're saying. And I've got one more question before the floor becomes yours totally, okay?
Oh, okay.
And the last question I have is, it might be 2 parts, it might be 1.5 parts, I'm not sure. But normally I ask people, why is it important for people to vote, right? And hold me before you answer that. I don't have kids. Why is it important for people who aren't directly involved in the education system to care who's on the school board? And then why should they and everybody vote? So it's kind of a 1.5 tiered question. But really, I'm just like, hey, these all sound important. This is something I should be concerned about, but it's really not going to hit my radar. I don't have kids. So why?
Right.
Answer that for me.
Well, a lot of reasons. I can give you many examples of when I ran for school board before, when I was out with, we've been shut in for 2 months, so we're not out as much, but I have interacted with the public and on various issues that have nothing to do with children. So let's see, number one, you have a bus stop at your driveway, at the end of your driveway. And the kids, this was a real concern, that, a constituent voiced to me. The kids are tearing up their plantings? Why does that school bus have to stop where they don't even have children? Was a good, valid question when, the person pointed out, if you just put it, a few yards down the road, that's an ideal. It's even better. There's room for them to play. They're not on private property. So, so when you have to do with your own private property, the bus garage, when they built the new bus garage, that whole community was upset because the school system, there was supposedly an agreement, and I don't know all the details, but they don't block the bus garage. So the floodlights stay on all night, there's noise, and they don't have kids. They're paying for to get good schools, but they also want to not be put out by the system. So those are two examples. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Yeah, I guess
but also,
knowing.
You're a small business owner, and you want to contribute to your community. You want to hire people that can do basic, math and, can fill out the application. You care about the quality of education. You need, you're invested. If you want, you're going to be living here, you'll go to these businesses where you have these people that literally, I've had people in stores that can't count the change.
Donna, these answers, Donna, these answers are really, really good. Thank you. Thank you for those answers. Now, we've exhausted the amount of things that I wanted to talk about. So if you have any pitch or if you have anything you want to say to potential voters or to get the word out about any sort of thing, any cause, any event, any business, anything you want to plug, now's the time. You can pretty much go any direction you want to on any topic and teach me something.
Okay, well.
And I know that was on the spot. That was very on the spot. We didn't prep for this one, but
Let me think about it. So I guess first thing I would say is I haven't had a lot of time to work on my website because I have been sick my voice, I'm losing it again. Plus I've been taking 3 classes. I did not plan to be taking any more classes, but I am so passionate about my community. I wanted to try to understand. I wanted to understand why there's such poverty in, Appalachia. So I've been taking classes in the Appalachian Studies program at Shepherd, and I also am taking a fundraising class, fundraising and grant writing, because I have lots of ideas about programs that we could, have in the community, especially for children, and I would need funding. So anyway, I only have 1 more week left of these classes. So once I'm done, then I plan to spend more time improving my website. It's just something that I put together. If people want to ask me, I am very open and knowledgeable about most subjects. I'm, willing to find out information. So that's one thing. Don't rely solely on my website because I think it needs some updating. What else?
So you have social media, you have a website.
Oh, yeah. My website, donnajoyforschoolboard.com. I don't know if you can see that because I only see a little speck in this camera. donnajoyforschoolboard.com. And then on Facebook, it's at vote 4 joy, VOTE 4 JOY.
Good. I can put all that in the show notes.
Okay.
I would say as we wrap up, tell me if all of a sudden you found $500,000, because like you said, they spent that on lawyers. Let's say you found a stray $500,000 in the budget and they kind of put you in charge of coming up with the concept of what you would do. What do you think you would spend it on? What just kind of off the cuff, no one's holding you accountable, but like what would be a dream scenario?
Well, I have a dream project that I have been trying to get the school system to take a look at for uh, 8 years since I started teaching there. So, I'm sure there are other programs that need the money, and I am really passionate about special ed. We definitely need um, an overhaul with the way we're dealing with special education in Jefferson County. Um, I could talk all day about that. I don't want to take up the whole time on those issues and but if we're just saying fund money,
Well, let's assume everything is funded decently, and then they're like,
okay,
"Hey, let's get outside the box for a second. Donna, take the lead on this."
okay. Well, this is my dream project. Um, so I, uh, so I once saw this documentary called Paper Clips, and it was about a middle school group teacher who wanted to teach kids about the Holocaust and to put a solid physical concrete value or representation of the number of lives lost as a result of the Holocaust. So they had the kids collect a paper clip, for each number of victims of the Holocaust. And they were learning how to write letters to get businesses to donate these paper clips. Then they had to count them, organize. Well, two victims of the Holocaust heard about their project, and they donated a train car from Germany. It was shipped over. Losing my voice. It was shipped over. That train car became a museum, and so it's it's a monument museum to the victims of the Holocaust. Meanwhile, these kids have learned, adding, subtracting, the math. They've learned the writing, the planning. They've learned a lot about the Holocaust, and their town has this lasting monument museum. Well, I want to do the same thing with to recognize the people that have been enslaved in any capacity in this country. And I would use a penny, Abraham Lincoln. So the same idea where the kids would get, they'd have to study slavery. Who were the enslaved? How many numbers do we need? And I would get a donated old ship or construct something to look like that, but the students would be learning, and we would end up with a lasting monument, and the whole community would be involved. And it's a way to say, I'm sorry, and it's we recognize our history, we value history. And each year, the kids that, after it's built, students would still be involved. They would learn about slavery, the importance of remembering history. I keep going off on that because of what 1918 and the epidemic, and wishing that people would recognize what happened back then as far as the second wave and whatnot. But anyway, I got something on my phone here. Okay. It was like I've lost you, so just a second.
Okay.
Oh, you're back. Nope, you're gone. Wait a minute.
I've still got you.
Oh, you do? I don't see you at all. I'll just sit here and talk to this blank screen then.
Yeah, sure. Just continue with the passion project. Yeah, I mean,
okay. So
appreciating history and whatnot.
So I mean, I don't want to get off onto that political. I guess it's political.
Well, that's fine. Well, look, that's a really great project. That's it.
Let me just finish that thought then.
Sure.
I just want to say that even after it's built and established, the new students would come and learn, and they would be working in the museum, and they would be teaching the public about the history of slavery is in this country, but especially in our county. And it's a way to, give a tribute, learn about history, and learn research, writing, math skills. This is driving me crazy that I can't see you.
It's okay. I have a still of your face. Well, look,
Oh.
so because we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, I mean, the good thing is we've covered all the points that I was looking to learn, and I hope you had a chance to share things that you wanted to share. Did we miss anything that you can think of off the top of your head?
Why I'm the best candidate, maybe?
Well, hold on a second. Let's do this. I'm going to hit pause on record, and I want to get your face back up. So give me a second. I'm probably going to stop video. You might get an email with a new room to go into, okay?
But it might just take me a second if I could just give me a second.
No, I want to do this right because I have all the ability to do the editing in the back on the post-production. So just give me a second here, okay? One second.
I'm here now.
Wait, there you are.
Yeah, I told you, just give me a second. I had to.
Technical difficulties averted.
And I'll put it this way.
There we go. Shift it a little bit to your right so we can see your whole poster. A little more, a little more, a little more. There you go. Okay, final question then. What makes you the best candidate?
Well, I am highly qualified, and I have, as being a teacher and having children in the school system, having taught every age and just about every subject, dealt with lots of different socioeconomic levels, living in one of the poorest and teaching in one of the poorest school systems in the country, but also teaching in one of the wealthiest school systems in the country, in Arlington. So I am familiar with the effects of socioeconomic levels. My research background, my ability to analyze research, conduct research, I think that that's crucial when you're dealing with a school system that there are so many different factors. Learning, philosophies about teaching styles, and then dealing with the public and planning, community planning. We have I'm getting more of these things up on my screen. Just as far as, like I said, when you are going to build the new schools, because we need. I've got to get that off so I can see. All right. Darn it. Give me a second. You're back. Oh, just give me 1 second. There. This is one of the, this is my cell phone. So anyway, was I saying? Yeah.
For the most part, Donna, you've been reiterating all of the same things we've already talked about. I mean, like you said, experience, research, statistics. You have the passion for education. You've been in it for your whole life. I mean, I can only hope that the other people are close to as experienced or as passionate as you are, and that would mean that no matter who gets voted in, people with passion are getting in. I don't understand what the ulterior motives would be, but I mean, that's kind of what you were getting at, I assume.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I am passionate about education, and I have a variety of experiences outside of education. I was an apartment manager for many years, and so I'm used to dealing with budgets. I was a bookkeeper going through college, so I have a lot of skills that the board, it would be helpful to quickly. I mean, I've been teaching math for 30 years, so I can look at I could see, well, that number's off. Just not that the people on the board can't. It's just that I have a lot of unique skills that a board could really use, and our board.
Donna, this has been a dynamite podcast. I have learned a lot, and I really, selfishly, that is all I was here to do, was to learn about Donna, learn about what the school board is, learn why it's important, specifically for people who don't have families or kids, why they should be voting. And I feel like I got all my boxes checked. I hope you feel like you have shared what you wanted to share. And this podcast, for the most part, should and can be a commercial. You can share it on social media as much as you want to. You can, it's not just to win my vote. It's to share with people. And everything you've said has been, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it was awesome. I mean, I learned a lot. So I really thank you for being on.
Well, thank you. I could talk all day about education.
And that's good. And because you have that much experience and that much passion, that's probably what makes you a good candidate. And of course, anybody who's listening, I welcome anybody who's running for office to come on to explain who they are. There's no gotcha moments. There's no let's catch you in something scandalous. It's again, it's like talking to somebody who doesn't know much about the topic and sharing the amount of knowledge and passion they have for the content, which is exactly what you did, Donna. And again, like I was complaining earlier in the week, I've had a few people who are running for office that have straight up blown me off. And I'm a little bit sideways with those candidates. And I'm not going to drop their name, but they're probably not going to get another opportunity to come on here, and not that it's even a big deal to be on here, but if that's how they're handling an appointment with somebody who took the time to prep and to be on a podcast with them, that's not a very good example for somebody I want to vote for, right? So again, I think you did a great job, and feel free to use this as part of your campaign. I think it's dynamite.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time and patience. And really good questions. And it's cool that you are from Arlington. Yeah. You went to Wakefield? Did you say you went to Wakefield?
I did not. I would have gone to Wakefield. I went to O'Connell.
O'Connell, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Which is a private school, which that's just the cards I was dealt. So I got to go to a very good college prep school. But all right, Donna. Well, we're going to sign off now. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
I appreciate you.
This podcast is brought to you by City National Bank in Ransom, West Virginia. I am Melissa Knott and manage both of our Jefferson County locations. Our Charlestown location is located on George Street in Charlestown, and the Ransom location is located in the Potomac Marketplace Shopping Center. City National Bank is a full-service community bank that provides an array of financial services. We offer a range of free checking accounts and savings products for both consumer and business customers. City National Bank offers competitive low-rate and low-cost lending products for both business and personal needs. Come and talk to me or one of my team members and get products and services that are tailored to fit your schedule and help you to achieve your financial goals. I can be reached at both the Ransom and Charlestown locations. Check out our website at www.bankatscity.com.
Today's intro song is called Mean in a Good Way. It's written and performed by Peter Clark off of his album Peter Clark After Dark. Peter describes this song as being the best song to learn hula hooping to. Peter is an avid hooper and recently started a hula hoop repair business. If you ever need hula hoop repair, consider contacting Peter. You can reach him on SoundCloud. Just search Peter Clark After Dark.